It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
Well, Scott, it was an eventful year with the election. So who do you have out there for winners in this political environment?
Well, I think the winner of 2024 here in Wisconsin would be a guy who had the worst possible year that ended up with the best possible result, I think, and that would be Robin Vos. I mean, the guy had 2 recall efforts against him. They had Trump people funding an independent candidate against him in his local race for state representative. The state legislature redistricted the maps to like a 50-50 level. The Democrats said they were going to take back the majority and Vos was not going to be speaker, and Vos is speaker and he has a bigger majority than anyone expected. So I think he had a pretty good year.
Well, that's really surprising that the former Speaker of the Assembly, who's a Republican, would think that Robin Vos had a good year when he lost 10 seats. But let's talk about winners from my perspective. The winner, biggest winner in my view, is Senate Democrats. And what a surprise that the former Senate Majority Leader would say that. But the reality was they had only 4 seats that they could pick up. They picked up all 4. There was a lot of chatter, especially from Republicans, that they would only get 2 or 3, 3 at the best. And by the way, the most important thing is that they are now set up to win the majority. And I would give that a 95% chance or better that they will win the majority, because there are going to be 3 competitive seats up. And actually, all 3 lean Democratic, and they only need to take 2 out of 3. Now, there is another seat up there in Clare that will be competitive, but they'll win that. So that's a big win. But I would say Greta Neubauer was the winner, not Robin Vos, because Greta Neubauer picked up 10 seats. Do you know how difficult it is to take existing seats with incumbents in them and win them? And although she had to as leader, and Scott would have done this if he was there, I certainly would do it if I were leader, to talk about how they're going to take the majority. And there was an outside chance. But to pick up 10 seats and to have, by the way, some pretty darn Democratic seats left to pick up, the seat that Dean Colfort won, and Robin Vos recruited him to keep the majority, the seat, the Todd Novak seat. There are some seats there that Democrats should be able to win now that they can concentrate on those seats. So I would say they are both winners. And by the way, the ancillary winner to that is Governor Evers, because he will now be able to say, look, if you don't want to compromise on the budget here, we'll just wait 2 years and we'll have majorities, and then we'll see how that goes after that happens. But I think you cannot talk about this, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't say that the biggest winner of Wisconsin was clearly Donald Trump, as he did across the country. We had the closest margin, from my perspective as a Democrat, and actually beating Donald Trump in the swing states, but every swing state was won by Donald Trump. And I think, as much as I really have a problem with how he succeeds, you have to give him credit. And it was enormously helpful to the people in the rest of the ticket. And by the way, that's another reason for my saying that the Assembly and Senate were winners, because it was remarkable to have Trump winning substantially in Wisconsin by not quite a percent, but winning, to buck that tide and be able to pull off what they did, I think is really good in comparison. How about losers? We didn't have just winners here. Who were the losers, Scott?
I think that clearly one of the losers in this election were the national Democratic donors who sent hundreds of millions of dollars to Wisconsin in the hopes of winning it for Trump, in the hopes of taking both houses of the legislature, in the hopes of picking up a congressional seat if possible in either the 3rd or the 1st. And that didn't happen for him. None of it did. And what that may happen now is the guy who helped him bring all that money to Wisconsin might be leaving the state of Wisconsin and going to Washington. That would be quite a turn of events for Democrats here in Wisconsin if they lost Wickler, who has just done a fantastic job in bringing money to the Democratic cause here in Wisconsin. But all that money did not make much difference here, even in races where the Democrats outspent the Republicans 3-1. They still lost a lot of those races.
Well, and by the way, I forgot, big winner, Tammy Baldwin, eking out a victory in a very difficult Democratic year with a lot of
Yep.
challenges out there. But in terms of losers, I really think the biggest dynamic here in Wisconsin was actually quite positive for Dems. And I think a lot of people aren't touting this because Democrats are really quite disappointed with what happened on the national level and what happened here in Wisconsin with Donald Trump. The big thing is the dynamics that have changed now with the legislature. I would say Republicans in the legislature, both the Senate and the Assembly, are the biggest one. They now have this huge budget surplus, which all Democrats have to do is say, look, if you don't come around to a reasonable thing where we get what we want for education and for property tax cuts, hey, we'll just wait 2 years and it's over. And in fact, if I were Democrats, I'd promise that they'll adopt a new budget in January of 20, what will it be, 2029, and boom, it'll be, or 2027. I think that that is a really good threat for Democrats. They don't have to give in to the blackmail of Robin Voss because it's not like it used to be. There's not this crazy gerrymander. And given that environment, Democrats can say, if we don't get a good deal, we're walking away. In fact, I think it would be political malpractice if the Democrats gave Robin Voss much of a deal at all, because they are going to have control very soon. Why wait? And by the way, even though the Trump victory is a huge positive for them nationally, from a state perspective, and Scott and I both know this, and Scott's talked about it more than I have. That first election after the second victory of a president, and even though Trump has had a blip in between, is always the most devastating for them in terms of losing legislative House seats, et cetera. So Democrats are not only going to have the regular off year advantage of the Trump thing, it's the second time around, but they're also in a situation where they now have maps that they can actually run on, and the Senate is poised to do this. So, given this dynamic, I think that the big losers here from this election are the legislative Republicans, because in fact, Donald Trump's win does not help them 2 years from now.
I suppose we can continue to go back and forth about whether the Republicans or Democrats were winners or losers, but I think we can agree on the fact that, the election went pretty well here in Wisconsin on the process level. And the election clerks all across the state, maybe exception Milwaukee. Other than that, I think it went really well across the state, and I don't see anyone raising questions about the results. And that's a good thing for democracy and a good thing for Wisconsin.
It's absolutely true. And I think the one thing that could make this better, and I didn't this get through one house but not the other, let's let Wisconsin's city clerks start counting at least at the start of election day, if not the night before, so that we can announce our results more quickly. People are always concerned when they don't see the results all come in together. If we just made that one simple change in the law, and I think both parties should be able to agree with this, unless you're trying to drag down democracy and say it's not, let's let that happen. So our city clerks, our county clerks, and whatever, our municipal clerks will be able to do this quickly, and it will make us look better, and it's actually reflecting the truth, which Scott just alluded to. We are doing a really good job of running elections, and we'll continue to do so. Let's make them look better by letting them count early.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.